Should the United States limit trade with China?
Hello, my name is Cesar Paulos, and I think trading with China should be limited because over the past 6 years we've spent more than $1,600,000,000,000 on exports, and we've only got in return $30.3 billion in imports. So that's one reason why I think trading with China should be limited.
A reason why trade with China should not be limited is because it is cheaper to make products in China than in the U.S. For an example, a large percent of Apple products, any type of toys that you see, if you look on it, it says China because they're manufactured in China.
So should the U.S. limit the trading with China?
Alright, so my answer to that would be it depends. If China is subsidizing an industry, that means that they're giving these companies money to make their product at a lower cost, then yeah, we should, at times, limit that trade, because that's almost like cheating. If you're going to give a company money to make a product cheaper and then try and sell it at a price lower than anyone else can compete, then I think that's unfair. So we should limit trade, especially when trying to subsidize something. They've been doing that recently, like with auto parts, getting replacement auto parts at a price that no one else can compete with around the world. That almost creates, like, in its own way, a monopoly, but the government's subsidizing it, so they're spending their own money to do it. Anyway, to me, that makes a sticky situation we shouldn't take part in necessarily, especially if it's making sure that we're losing jobs or losing a sector of our economy. But on the same note, we can't compete with China with low-skilled, low-paying jobs. They are going to beat us in that. We can't keep low-skilled, low-paying jobs in America. And so I'd agree with President Obama in that we want to start training our workforce to make high-skilled, high-wage jobs and let those lower sectors of our economy, low-skilled, low-wage, go to different parts of the globe, because that's what's going to happen anyway. That's what I think about that.
Okay. And how do you feel about China buying the U.S. debt?
Alright, so China has chosen to buy like trillions of dollars of the United States debt. Some people could see that as being a risk in that China could call back that debt prematurely. Of course, they would get penalties with that, right? Or that, I don't know why some people are scared of that, but me personally, I don't think it's a problem at all, because China and America's economies are linked. The government's been called the lender of last resort for things like banks in America. In case the banks fail, we lend them money, right? Well, America is the buyer of last resort for Chinese goods. So if China can't sell them anywhere else in the world, who do they think is going to buy these products that they need to sell? America. If they call back all of our debt and our economy goes down, we stop buying these goods that they need to sell, their economy goes down too. America and China's economies are linked. So they couldn't really try and do something to hurt our economy without hurting themselves. So currently, I don't think it's a problem. I mean, especially because right now the EU is hurting, the European Union, that's who they would sell goods to if America didn't buy it. But right now, Europe's having their own troubles. The EU is about to break apart. But if the EU somehow fixed all these things, they got stronger, and now China was able to sell all of the products there instead of us, that could create maybe an issue with our debt being to them. But maybe by then we've figured out a way to diversify who's buying up our debt. Or we've found a way to pay it off.
Okay, thank you for your opinion on the topic.
You're very welcome.
Another reason why I think the United States should limit trade with China is because it decreases job value in the United States. There's over 26 million people in the United States currently without jobs, and I think continuing to export goods from China is raising the value of our job system, and if we limit that and import more goods, it would also increase jobs and how much money we make, and that's why I think we should limit trade with China.
A reason why trade with China should not be limited is because it is cheaper to make products in China than in the U.S. For an example, a large percent of Apple products, any type of toys that you see, if you look on it, it says China because they're manufactured in China. And it is cheaper to make in China. When you go to any convenience store and buy a toy, it would be cheaper for U.S. citizens to buy them there. And that can have a positive effect because it can create higher paying jobs and less dangerous jobs to U.S. citizens and keep the low paying jobs and more dangerous jobs in China.
Do you think that the U.S. should limit the trading with China?
No. Trading has never been the issue. It's the balance of trade. When countries don't trade balanced, when there's not a balance of imports and exports, there's always an advantage or disadvantage economically to one country or the other. And currently, China has the economic advantage over us with their trade, but it's also not necessarily their fault. It's too difficult to produce things in the United States with unions and costs and taxes. We simply cannot compete with China. So it's not an issue of should we trade more with China. It's an issue of we should regulate our businesses more efficiently so they can produce stuff to compete.
And do you think that it's good for China to buy the U.S. debt?
It's good to keep in mind that China's also in debt. It's interesting. The entire world is like $40 trillion in debt. Don't ask me how that's possible. It just is. So it's not necessarily a massive, terrible thing. But it does certainly give us some national security issues. What if they call on that debt? Chances are they're not, because it would be economic Armageddon for both countries, and that doesn't benefit anybody, but it does give you some issues with that. But otherwise, no. Just as long as we balance out our trade, it'd be okay. Not that big of a deal.
Thank you for your opinion.
Another reason why we should not limit trade with China is because they can bring a very diverse culture into the U.S. That can have a positive effect because Chinese can bring a better schooling technique to the U.S. because China is one of the top countries in the world known for education.
Should the U.S. limit the Chinese trade?
Only limited in the extent that we have a fair trade agreement, meaning whatever export, they have to buy. Okay, they can't send back to us. Because what they do is they repackage, recopy, they resell, they relicense, they copy American patents, and they resell it. That, to me, is breaking international law. And that's what Chinese do.
Do you think that the Chinese buy too much of the U.S. debt?
I think that we allow them to buy our debt because we're desperate, number one, and number two, it makes it easier for them to tell us what our political decisions ought to be indirectly. And I think that's really dangerous. That way it sounds like a racist comment.
See, like
Doesn't matter, say
I
anybody.
know,
I don't care what they're
they put it in terms of building factories, but you know their ultimate goal. Right now they're buying Brazil like crazy. They're buying up Brazil like crazy. Half the country has already bought it.
Right.
Right.
But it's the ceiling.
They own the park, their assets.
Sold the land to do what with it?
Own it. You can't defeat the country, you can't own the country, what you do is you buy it.
Yeah.
Like Hawaii. The Japanese couldn't win Hawaii, so what they do is they bought Hawaii.
Right, but if
Majority of the landowners in Hawaii are actually Japanese, that's how they win.
but in time conflict, all real estate rights count.
So right now they're actually taking and building U.S. factories in the U.S., in China.
But if we ever get in a war, but if we
But
ever actually have to go to war with China, it just means if they own land in the U.S., that means they're just going to lose their assets in America.
50% of our military equipment are actually built by Chinese. The U.S. military equipment, 50% is actually built by Chinese.
It doesn't matter who's building it. We have them.
But it doesn't make sense. You know that from the failure.
No, I